A man addressing an unseen crowd. Big strong boys for farm work, he says.
I am lost for words concerning the subject of today because human beings are actually currently sold as slaves in Libya, as if they were common goods, animals, al-bada'iyah in Arabic, merchandise.
What you have seen is an extract of an amazing work done by CNN showing the reality of slave auctions in Libya.
For many of us, slavery is such something that we are used to see in history books, on some memorials, maybe on paintings, on museums, that it is pretty hard to actually realize that it is happening today. Not 500 years ago, today. Being sold on a slave market just happened to this poor man. We do not know what his name is and where he is from, but in order to realize better what is happening, in order to put a face on facts and on immigration figures, we are going to give him a name. We are going to call him Ismail. We are going to consider that he comes from Nigeria. And we are going to see what kind of story brought him to be sold on the slave market. This is going to help us understand the story of all the others. More generally, we are going to see what is behind this sentence, slavery in Libya. At the end of this video, you are going to understand better what is happening there. The weight of migrations to Europe, where the migrants are from, what the geopolitical context is behind this, what events turn migrants into slaves, what they endure in the desert and in the Mediterranean Sea. Maybe you have some clues here and there about the story, but I couldn't find a resource on the internet which was actually really connecting the dots. And this is what we are going to do here. We are going to connect the dots. At the end of the video, I promise you one thing. This is that you are going to get a good image, a good picture of the story as a whole, a picture that not many people have. My name is Patrice, you are on Foreign Chronicles, and thank you for following my small channel. If you appreciate my work, you can support me by participating on Patreon, as do these people that I thank very, very warmly. So, what is happening? All those people you see had to flee their homes, their families, their friends, because they had no chance otherwise. Before we actually enter in their story, it is important to take the measure of the size of the problem. In order to do that, here is a powerful illustration from Roy Beck about the weight of migrations to the United States compared to the weight of world poverty.
This gumball represents the 1 million legal immigrants that the United States has taken every year on average since 1990. Now, who in the world deserves our humanitarian compassion? The World Bank has one measure of the desperately poor of the world. They make less than $2 a day. And how many people make less than $2 a day in the world? Well, let's start with Africa. In Africa alone, there are 650 million people who make less than $2 a day. 650 million. And in India, another 890 million people, desperately poor. And these countries, unfortunately, will be adding another 80 million people into these impoverished nations. We could take 5 million a year, but we'd never get ahead of what's happening in these countries. Not in this century. Don't you see? Immigration can never be an effective or significant way to deal with the suffering people of the world.
This video was released in 2010 on YouTube. You can find the link in the description below. The point of Roy Beck through this presentation is to say that the impact that the United States can have is so small anyway, seeing the figures, that there is no real point to open its doors to migrations. Well, you can discuss that. This is not my point here. We can discuss that in the comment section. My point is to underline the fact that the migration issues that face rich countries are anyway, by their size, in total disproportion with the size of the problems that cause those migrations. In other words, that for the Western countries, what they see is not even the very, very tiny tip of the iceberg, an imperceptible amount of an enormous humanitarian tragedy. Now, since our subject is Libya, we are talking about migrations to Europe. So where are the migrants from in Europe?
Here are some statistics from the United Nations Refugees Agency, the UNHCR, concerning the year 2017. Before watching where the refugees are from, I take the opportunity to underline some facts that jump at us. First, that in 2017, in their vast majority, refugees are men. It seems quite comprehensible to me that for such a dangerous journey, and given the originating country, families decide that it is the man who is going to give it a try, while the woman is going to take care of the children.
The second obvious fact is this huge increase in the number of the arrivals between 2014 and 2015, mainly due to a surge of migrations to Greece from three countries: Syria first, then Iraq, then Afghanistan, followed by a big drop in 2016 and 2017, partly due to an agreement between the EU and Turkey, signed in the first months of 2016. Concerning the originating countries, Mediterranean Sea refugees are not anymore primarily from Syria in 2017, but from Nigeria.
Then from Syria, Guinea, Ivory Coast, Morocco, Bangladesh. I take out the countries which are not Africans, since we focus on Africa today. Gambia, Mali, Iraq, Algeria. To continue, I took another source equally reliable, but that is a bit older, since those are the figures of the year 2015-2016. With this source from Eurostat, we see that the other main countries of immigrations are Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Eritrea, Albania, Russia, Somalia, Ukraine, Sudan, Turkey, and Senegal. Well, all those nations, if we accept Morocco and Algeria, which are directly bordered by the Mediterranean Sea, all those nations come from this area, an area where all the countries except Ghana have a very low Human Development Index.
A word about Nigeria. In the introduction, I told you that we would consider that Ismail was from Nigeria. I did not pick it up randomly. I picked it up because Nigeria is the main country of departure of the migrants, and because the proportion of migrants coming from this country might very well become greater and greater in the decades to come. The country is unstable, fighting the most atrocious terrorist organization on the planet, Boko Haram, has no food self-sufficiency and an explosive demography.
Nigeria had around 50 million inhabitants 50 years ago. In 2017, it has reached 190 million inhabitants. It is expected by the United Nations to surpass the United States by 2050 and even approach the population of China by 2100. The country is simply not big enough to be able in the future to meet the basic needs of such a huge population. There is a tremendous demographic boom in a very poor and unstable country.
So, sorry for the semantic, but we have a migration bomb here. In other words, the migration issues and the suffering behind it are nothing compared to what will happen very likely tomorrow.
Besides Nigeria, 6 countries are particularly affected by violences: Mali, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Somalia, South Sudan, Sudan, and of course Libya. We'll get back to this last one. So, whether they live in Nigeria or in any other of these countries here in orange, the most fragile populations, burdened by poverty and violence, don't have the choice but to leave their home.
Maybe Ismail was from the northeast of Nigeria.
Maybe from the village of Baga, situated in one of the worst places to be, as the area is facing confrontations between Boko Haram and the Nigerian or Chadian armies. His village has been completely destroyed, burnt to the ground by Boko Haram. Him and his family had the chance to escape, but couldn't go back. They decided to go to a camp until they could return, just for a few months. Maybe they went to the Muna camp in Maiduguri. But the endless backs and forth of the combats never left him feel like it was safe enough to return. In the camp, the conditions of living are really difficult. It is hardly possible to get some money from anywhere, as they have a restricted access to the local economy. There is no real education for the children.
Falmata Ajia has come to this treatment center run by the medical humanitarian organization Doctors Without Borders after her nephew Kayima died. She left his body in their tent at the Muna camp for displaced people in Maiduguri, where there is a cholera outbreak. She's feeling weak and feverish.
1 year has passed like this. A second year. And in front of the suffering of his family, he felt like he had to do something. He could have gone to an urban area, which is usually the choice that the great majority of the refugees do. He could have decided to go to Abuja or in the nearby great towns, but the unemployment rate is high. The life is expensive.
Furthermore, you do not have access to assistance, and as a foreigner, you do not always have the right to work. This is not what Ismail wants.
He sees this solution as a dead end, and what he wants is a real future for his family. So he decided to go for the forbidden option, the most dangerous one, but also the only one that he saw with a real potential. He decided to seek some hope for his family by risking his life in a perilous journey to Europe. As thousands of refugees, the only options available to him were encampment, urban destitution, and a dangerous journey. As he wanted a real chance for his family, and despite the risks, Ismail went for the third option. He hardly gathered
his life savings in order to get a part of the money that he would need for his travel to Europe for his terrible journey.
First, his objective is Agadez, a beautiful city which historic center is on the World Heritage List of the UNESCO. Agadez has the particularity to be the last hospitable town before the wide and hot Sahara. A Sahara which Ismail must cross. To go there is not the difficult part, as the Economic Community of West African States, the ECOWAS, is visa-free. If you have the necessary money, you can simply take some buses which leave you there. And then you get your chance to cross the desert and therefore make a step forward in your journey. This is why Agadez is a big hub for the Western African migrants who want to reach Europe, as is, by the way, Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, for Eastern African migrants. In Agadez starts the dangerous part, because crossing the desert is a perilous thing. You need to go through the 750,000 kilometers which separate you from the Libyan border. During the day, you have to cover your head from the sun and your mouth from the sand, hoping to avoid a sandstorm. At night, the living conditions are as well extremely basic. For their part, the vehicles are filled with a minimum amount of water and a maximum number of thirsty people. Any technical problem can soon turn in a human disaster, and there is not much hope for those who are lost in the desert. To complete the picture, for this perilous journey you have to put your life in the hands of untrustworthy smugglers. There are many in Agadez. They are the ones selling illegally the crossing of the desert, and they make a lot of money out of it. Local militias also take part in this human trafficking by kidnapping some migrants and asking for ransom. But whatever the risks, Ismail might have tempted this dangerous journey. And since the video has been turned in Libya, well, he made it. He made it till there, but somehow, somewhere on the road, something did not turn out the way he hoped for. Ismail turned out to be sold as a slave. Before having a look on the few hypotheses which could explain what happened to him, let's watch what he was trying to do. As a great part of the migrants from both East and West Africa, Ismail was probably trying to reach the area of Tripoli or Benghazi, in order to take a boat and reach Europe. While migrants from Northeast Africa are going to try to reach Spain, and that migrants from the Orient are targeting Greece, migrants from East and West Africa mainly try to reach Europe through Italy, usually first through Sicily. They frequently also happen to reach Malta or the island of Lampedusa, which is Italian. Here is Lampedusa. It's a beautiful island. I show it here, and it can seem like I'm out of the subject, but actually I'm not, because since media only talk about Lampedusa concerning migrants and problems with the migrants, well, tourists don't go there anymore. Maybe thinking that they might be eaten alive by a migrant or something, I don't know. Mierda.
¿Qué pasa? ¿Te ríes?
So Ismail was likely trying to reach Tripoli.
But why do many migrants prefer the Libyan road to the other roads? Well, the answer is manifold and has to do with Libya's specificities. One of the great reasons, though, is that the Libyan leader Muammar al-Gaddafi, as part of his Pan-African policy, started to welcome sub-Saharan Africans to work in Libya. Through these workers' movements, encouraged by al-Gaddafi, the already existing and historical migration routes through Libya have therefore been consolidated.
I have to say that I couldn't find a good decisive reason why migrants would choose such a road. I mean, they risk a lot. I do have a couple of ideas, of course, I will tell you later, but the thing is that we are going to see all the risks that take the migrants when they go to Libya. And what Ismail was facing taking this road.
The country is currently in an ongoing civil war. A first civil war started at the time of the Arab revolutions, in 2011. The NATO coalition, within which notably participated the friends of Sarkozy, entered in the conflict against the forces of al-Gaddafi. They entered in the battle when his forces were regaining control. What the NATO did in its intervention was far beyond what authorized the UN mandate.
Vive Benghazi! Vive la Libye! Vive l'amitié entre la France et la Libye!
It did not respect the limited conditions of its intervention and has an important responsibility in the chaos that followed in Libya.
The coalition said destroying Gaddafi was not their goal. Then why bomb his palaces? Now some officials have claimed that eliminating him was in fact their goal. Who gave them that right?
A responsibility that recognized the current French President Emmanuel Macron the 1st of February 2018 in front of the Tunisian Assembly.
L'Europe, les États-Unis et quelques autres ont une responsabilité quant à la situation actuelle. C'est indiscutable. Responsabilité qui a conduit...
Following those military operations and after a complete destabilization, the country regained an appearance of stability before falling in a second civil war in 2014.
A civil war ongoing, as I mentioned. So, crossing Libya means crossing a country at war. To keep it simple, while the situation in Libya is everything but simple, Libya is a tribal country,
divided between the forces of the Field Marshal Haftar and the forces of Fayez al-Sarraj. Broadly speaking, the Field Marshal Haftar is a military considered as secular who took power with the support of the army, while Fayez al-Sarraj took office following a reconciliation agreement mediation of the United Nations. And for now, neither side has the strength to overpower the other. The Islamic State was also an actor of the conflict but has been beaten territorially. They still have the capability of causing harm to the population through terrorist attacks, though.
There are also the Tebu and Tuareg forces in the south, normally under an historical peace treaty, but opposing each other in this war.
So what do you risk to go through this chaotic territory? After the perilous journey through the desert, most passengers are dropped off in the first major towns across the border, Katroun or Saba. Then what happens to the migrants is up to the smugglers.
And it seems like a trap in which Ismail felt.
From what I could find, depending on which smuggler they have chosen, or depending on the local militia which retrieved them, they will be asked for money.
if they can pay upfront, alright, they go to the next point, where the same scheme might happen. If they don't, they are locked up in a compound until their family or local migrant worker pays for their ransom. They can also be used by the smugglers as a way to earn money on a daily basis. They are required to pay for their stay and to do whatever jobs they can in order to earn enough money to be authorized to go to the next point. Here is a documentary which explains that. It's from Ross Kemp and I warmly recommend you to watch it. The link is in the description below.
2 years now.
2 years?
Yes, just 2 years. Yes, I'm working here. I'm a mechanic.
You're a mechanic?
Yes.
What do you do?
Okay, I'm a barber.
We don't really know, depending on how fast we get our money. Take a very long time.
This might have happened to Ismail. But at a point, a militia might have thought that it would be more profitable to sell him than to let him work. According to CNN, he was sold for 1,200 Libyan pounds, so around 700 euros, $900, in a slave market around Tripoli.
Much of the scene. One by one, men are brought out as the bidding begins. 400. 500. 550. 600. 650. 700. Very quickly, it's over.
Since, no track of him. He never reached the last part of his perilous journey to Europe. He never took a boat to cross the Mediterranean Sea. If he had, the same kind of logic as the logic in the desert would have happened. The smugglers would have put a maximum number of people in the boat to get as much money as possible from one trip. The distance between Libya and Italy is around 200 miles. So the boats leave the Libyan coast in order to reach Italy. Before the international waters, the smugglers try to avoid bumping in one of the few Libyan patrols that try to control the area. The European Union is directly or indirectly financing those patrols, as well as the EU is financing the Libyan centers where the migrants are parked when they are catched. In other words, the European Union is financing the government of Tripoli, the one of Fayez al-Sarraj, on those aspects. So when catched, the migrants are parked in those Libyan centers, where other migrants, catched by Libyan authorities or retaken to smugglers and kidnappers, are also parked. If we follow this European communication released by Reuters, the European Union is giving money to improve the living conditions of the people living in those centers. Well, nothing is factually wrong in this communication, except the United Nations don't see it this way. The European Union's policy of assisting the Libyan Coast Guard to intercept and return migrants in the Mediterranean is inhuman. The suffering of migrants detained in Libya is an outrage to the conscience of humanity, said the UN Human Rights Chief. So the EU policy is simply nothing less than inhuman, according to the UN. It is inhuman because it does not take into account the horrible conditions in which migrants are detained in the Libyan centers.
Some people, they are shitting in body. When we say we want to go to toilet, it's problem. Every day they has beaten me. Look at my eye now, my hair. He's beaten. They are shooting some people. I swear. Not lie, because I see it for my eye.
The situation is, as he told you before, if I told more and more, they may beaten us after they go. I can't talk more. Because just help as time. I can't say anything yet.
In a nutshell, in your journey to Europe, you better not be caught by anybody. You don't want to be kept in a compound by smugglers. You don't want to be kidnapped for ransom. You don't want to be sold as a slave. But if you are freed by Libyan policemen, this is not that better, because you are kept in a Libyan center with those inhuman conditions. You are also sent in those centers if the police catch you as an illegal migrant, or to come back on our migrants in their crowded boat heading to Europe, if you are intercepted by Libyan patrol. For those who are not, what's next?
Do you expect those boats to make the journey all the way to Italy, 200 miles?
ما يصلش 200 ميل. You security Italy 30 ميل. 200 mil problem.
You're effectively relying on the European search and rescue mission to pick up the migrants.
Yes.
As says the smuggler, it often happens that the boats are not filled up with enough fuel to reach Italy. The motor suddenly stops, and the migrants are lost in the waters, often without even life jackets. Other problems can happen due to the malevolence of the smugglers and to the poor security conditions of the crossing. Who is going to save the boat, and what are the consequences? Since Italy is on the front line, overwhelmed by more than 600,000 migrants who landed on its coast in the last 4 years, Italian coast guards are on the alert, both for saving migrants and for fighting smugglers. In 2013, in order to tackle the increasing immigration, but also after the country was under shock following the tragedy of the Lampedusa shipwreck, where more than 350 migrants died, the Italian government launched the Operation Mare Nostrum, an operation which saved thousands of migrants from drowning in the Mediterranean Sea. An operation which cost a lot to Italia without the help of any foreign contribution, unless the one of Slovenia, according to the Wall Street Journal. Since 2014, the Italian Mare Nostrum operation has been transformed in an operation led by Frontex. Frontex is the European agency which coordinates and develops the European border management. In the case of the Mediterranean Sea, Frontex has 2 operations: Poseidon for Greece and Triton for Italy. The Triton operation is under Italian command, equipped with aircrafts, patrol boats, and also has a task to catch smugglers. So there is both a humanitarian and a frontier control aspect. If a migrant is rescued in the Mediterranean, the Triton operation requires Italy to welcome him in one of his ports. In August 2017, the Italian government made a deal with the Libyan government of Fayez al-Sarraj in order to have naval boats patrolling within the Libyan waters, to which the Parliament of Tobruk responded that having foreign navy vessels patrolling in Libyan waters would be a violation to the sovereignty of Libya. The General Khalifa Haftar, so the leader who oversees the eastern part of the country, as we said, threatened to repel any naval vessel that enters the national waters without permission from the army. So we had here tensions between Italy and the government of Haftar, even if Italy seeks to be reassuring with it. Broadly speaking, Italy thinks that Europe has abandoned it concerning this overwhelming problem. Recently, though, Italy has obtained some advancement through the new Operation Themis, which is replacing the Operation Triton. Themis is a broader operation covering all the central Mediterranean, including in its mission the flux coming from Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Turkey, and Albania. One of the big changes for Italy in this Operation Themis is that ships won't have to bring the rescued migrants to Italy. Where can they bring them? To the closest port, for instance. It seems up to the country which leads the rescue. But I couldn't find precise documentation concerning this. Of course, fishermen and NGOs also take part in the rescue. For instance, the Vos Estia, a Save the Children boat, Seafish, a boat belonging to a German non-profit, or the Astral, a boat manned by the Spanish NGO Proactiva Open Arms. According to El País, in 2016, for instance, the NGO boats performed 40% of the rescues, so an important part of it. NGOs sometimes receive pressure from both the Libyan patrol boats, which do not like to see them enter Libyan waters, or by Europe. They have been accused of fostering clandestine immigration, as you can see in this extract.
On the 15th of December 2016, the Financial Times, who I'm sure you all know, published several excerpts from leaked Frontex reports that suggest a high level of cooperation between smugglers and NGOs. Quote, criminal networks were smuggling migrants directly on an NGO vessel, unquote.
Obviously, the goal of the NGOs, which is to save the migrants which are drowning in the Mediterranean Sea, can interfere with the primary goals of Frontex, which is to tackle migrations and to tackle the smugglers. Let's go back to our question. Why do they take so much risks through the Libyan journey? We have seen the risks that take the migrants in the desert, those within Libya, and finally the drama happening in the Mediterranean Sea. Knowing that they can die in the desert, knowing that they can endure years of sacrifices locked in a compound, that they can be reduced to slavery, that they can die in the Mediterranean, that they can be locked in a Libyan center with inhuman conditions. Why do migrants choose Libya more than Algeria, for instance? Why do they go for it, knowing that they risk the same consequences than the one that happened to Ismail? In Algeria, they face heavy fines, they face prison sentences, but they do not face such risks. Well, maybe because choosing to cross a country like Algeria does not give the same probability of success, and that this probability of success is the priority for the migrants, whatever the risks. Maybe because in a way or in another, if you go for this dangerous journey to Europe, you need anyway to put your faith in the hands of smugglers, and that smugglers take far less risks by acting in a failed state like Libya than they would in Algeria, so they won't make you go through another country. Here is a quote of an article from El País which partly answers to this question. As the Libyan route has become harder to navigate, arrivals to Spain have risen from 8,000 to 20,000 in the space of a year, suggesting that the migrants have once again changed their route into Europe. The Colonel Fuente Cobo, an expert at the Spanish Institute for Strategic Studies, says that Europe finds itself very much at the start of something more serious. The population in Africa is growing at an explosive rate. Part of that can be absorbed by its own development, but not all. You can understand it better by applying the laws of physics. Europe is on the edge of a demographic catastrophe. If you create an empty space, it is only natural that others should come to fill it, and they will do it using the path of least resistance. And this is the path that chose our poor Ismail. People are now more or less aware about this subject, but not enough. Not enough. We are talking about slavery in Libya currently, not in the future, not in the past, currently. Some signals, though, do have an international impact, like the one that sent Paul Pogba when he scored for Manchester against Newcastle, doing that. But broadly speaking, we don't hear enough about this. We don't hear enough so that politics really take into account this matter seriously. The YouTuber Najna M expresses better than I would do why I decided to make a video about slavery in Libya.
How can I say it? It's like, there's nothing to say. I'm just hurt. Like, do you know what I mean? It's so sad. Like, what can you actually do? I feel so useless. But then I thought about it. I was like, you know what? If I put a video out, it might help. Someone else might get an idea and try to change the world in it. Because I don't know what I could do. Like, just talking about it could actually solve. It's not going to solve anything, but at least we're aware. Talking about it will make it. Talking about it will raise awareness. But anyways, I was on the train.
Well, I hope that you are going to spread the word. It's important. Thank you for watching Foreign Chronicles, et à bientôt.